Exactly a week later, the kids and Abednigo were still processing their papers to travel. And Abednigo traveled to his hometown to officially inform his people about what God used the ghost lady to do for them. His people were all rejoicing, and his mother danced and danced without wanting to stop. The following day, Abednigo decided to go to the town specifically because of the network, so he could do a few things on his phone since there was no network in his village. As soon as he arrived in town, his phone started vibrating at intervals, and when he picked it up from his pocket to check, he saw several text messages from the State Secret Service guy. With curiosity, he quickly opened it, and the first message he read almost made him pass out. Abednigo, I have been trying to reach you. If you're seeing this, just be very careful. A guarder has escaped from prison through the help of some prison warders. As soon as he saw it, his phone slipped off his hand and landed on the ground. Thank goodness the screen was still intact. Immediately, he picked it up from the ground, dialed the State Secret Service guy's number, and he picked up almost immediately. Abednigo was trembling in fear, and even as he placed the phone on his ear, his hand was shivering. "Hello. Hello, sir," he said in a trembling tone. "Abednigo, I have been trying to reach you to inform you that Agada guy escaped," the State Secret Service guy repeated. "So it's true, and he hasn't been found?" Abednigo asked with curiosity. "No, he hasn't. That guy bribed his way out," the State Secret Service guy said, and on hearing that, Abednigo slowly removed his phone from his ear, with his gaze fixed. "So what's going to become of me now?" Abednigo soliloquized as he stood beside the road confused on what next to do. He sighted this shop from afar with an empty chair before it, and he crossed over, walked slowly towards it, and sat on the chair without saying a word to anyone. He unlocked his phone again and started surfing the internet, as well thinking about what he just heard and what his next step should be, when he stumbled upon a post on Facebook all of a sudden of an old woman who was shot and killed in her residence, with the person's picture attached, and lo and behold, it was Mama. He screamed, and people gathered around him asking what happened, but his mouth was too heavy to utter a word as he was shedding tears. He got up, called a bike man from where he sat, not minding the people gathered around him, asking with curiosity what had happened that made him scream that much. He climbed the bike and whispered to the bike guy to take him to the park, and on getting to the park, he called his mom to inform her about all that had happened, and that he was traveling back. "Without your bag?" she exclaimed. "Bag? What has a bag got to do with this?" he asked her, and then burst into tears. "My benefactor has been killed, and you're there telling me about a bag," he said in sobs, and the other people at the park too started staring at him. "Brother, so sorry," a middle-aged woman beside him said, and he nodded. He boarded a vehicle from there, and they reached after some 5 to 6 hours. He took a bike from the park, and on reaching Mama's gate, it was flung open. He walked into the compound slowly with his eyes screening everywhere. He went towards the living room and met the door opened ajar too with bullet holes on it. "So, where are the twins?" he asked himself again, bursting into tears. "I wish you never left your sons. See what is already happening after telling me that you were going to rest. Where do I start looking for your kids? Where do I go? Who do I ask?" He soliloquized in tears, and then a thought came into his mind to go into the community and ask the community head some questions, as maybe he would have an answer. He left there and found his way into the community head's compound. The head offered him a seat and asked who he was and who he came to see. After explaining everything to him, he let out a deep sigh and then shook his head. That night those armed men came into this community. I'm sure that even the young will not forget in a hurry. We started hearing gunshots all of a sudden around 11 p.m. and even our vigilante men here couldn't go close to them because those boys were carrying more sophisticated guns, shooting here and there. It was so heartbreaking when we woke up the next day to the news of the woman's death, he said, shaking his head again. But what about the twins and the other girl? Abednigo asked with curiosity, adjusting himself on the chair he sat on. My dear, by the time we got there after the boys left, we met no one in the house. The only person we met was the woman lying on the floor in the pool of her own blood. The whole place was deserted, and we don't even know if they took her children with them, or they ran away themselves. But the police are still investigating, and we hope for good news soon. Jesus! Abednigo exclaimed, bursting into another round of tears. He sat before the community head, drenched in his own tears. He was so confused on what next to do as he sat there calculating his next move. And then, an idea popped into his head. Sir, he said with a shaky voice. Please do you know if the late woman's daughter has come home from the city? I mean the daughter in the city. I'm thinking maybe the kids found their way to her place, he added. You mean the one that lives in the city? The community head probed with a finger in the air. Yes, sir, Abednigo said, nodding sporadically. No, I don't think so. Those children are too young to make that kind of journey. How would they have been able to find their way there? I don't know, too. I'm just so confused, Abednigo said, with his head bowed as he burst into tears again. And then he looked up all of a sudden. Please, sir, I don't know if you, by any chance, have the contact of Mama's daughter in the city, so I can at least ask her if the children are with her, he said. And the man shook his head slowly. I am sorry, but I don't have her phone number. But since you're a concerned friend of the family, I will give you someone's phone number now that you can call to ask if he has the phone number of the woman's daughter, the community head said. And on hearing that, Abednigo adjusted himself on the couch with his face glued to him. You will do that for me? Abednigo probed with a hand on his chest. That is nothing. We are all praying that the children are safe wherever they are or wherever they must have taken them to. Better still, let me call him first, said the community leader. Abednigo then quickly brought out his phone from his pocket, and the community head too brought out his, and he called the contact of one of their village young guys who lived very close to Mama's first daughter in the city. After calling him first and informing him of what had happened, and that he needed the woman's daughter's number, the young man sent it as soon as the community head ended the call. Immediately, Abednigo excused himself and dialed the number. They exchanged pleasantries at first, and then Abednigo told her who he was, but he noticed that she paused at first, and then continued. Please, Ma, the reason I called is that I don't know if the kids are with you. I travelled to my hometown and I even got to know about what happened to Mama on Facebook when I stumbled on the post made by someone. Well, they are not here. Are you still in the village? She asked. Yes, but I'll leave anytime soon. Please, I'll be coming to the village tomorrow. How do we see? She asked. Oh, really? That means I'll have to lodge in a hotel or something. Okay. Perfect. See you tomorrow then, she said. After the call, Abednigo thanked the man and left there in search of a comfortable hotel he could stay and wait for Mama's first daughter. Abednigo was in the hotel when a thought came through his mind to go to the police station to see if they were really doing their investigations and to see what they had been able to gather so far. But he thought it wasn't wise to go there alone, so he decided to be patient till the next day so that Mama's first daughter and he could go there together. The following day in the afternoon, Mama's first daughter arrived in the village and then gave Abednigo a call to inform him that she was in town. He quickly dressed up and went to meet her where she told him to come. They met. Abednigo sympathized with her and also suggested to her that they go to the police station and see how far the police had gone with their investigations, and she agreed. They arrived at the police station and introduced themselves to the officers there and were taken to the DPO's office, where they again introduced themselves to him, telling him that they were the late Mama's children. The DPO told them that they were still investigating and that the house would be sealed until they were done investigating. As they stood up to leave, all of a sudden Mama's first daughter paused, turned to the DPO and asked him to get Abednigo arrested, saying he was the one who orchestrated the whole thing. If he hadn't come into her mother's life, her life wouldn't have been endangered. He knows all the people involved. After torturing him, he will take them to their place, she claimed. What? I swear, I know nothing about what you're talking about, Abednigo said to the DPO, and then turned to Mama's first daughter. If I knew anything about what happened to Mama, do you think I would return to this village when I saw the news? I can swear on anything that I know nothing about it. Mama was like my own grandmother, and the twins were like my siblings, and I love them too much to hurt them. You're not even as hurt and heartbroken as I am, he added amidst tears. Officer, please lock him up. He's lying. I know what you're trying to do. You want to take everyone out of the way so you can inherit my late sister's property simply because Mama involved you in everything, right? You want to reap where you did not sow? What? God forbid, that's not true, Abednigo said with tears dripping down his cheeks. The DPO, who initially sat there dumbfounded, just staring at the both of them, suddenly voiced out, Wait, you mean he's not the late woman's son? Then who is he? No, he's not. He's just a random guy who my mother was kind to simply because he was good to my late sister's children. He's even supposed to travel abroad with my late sister's children. All expenses paid from my late sister's account, and he's not even contributing a penny. He also knows where my late sister's property is located, one after the other, and I'm very sure he has the papers because I have no idea where the papers are, she said, rolling her eyes. What? Abednigo exclaimed. The DPO, who had relaxed on his chair with a hand under his jaw, watching them with keen interest, sighed all of a sudden. Well, he called on an inspector and then ordered him to lock Abednigo up. I know my rights. What are you locking me up for? For something I know nothing about. Abednigo kept screaming until the inspector came, took his phone from him, and he was being dragged into the cell like a common criminal. Wait! At least let me call someone. Abednigo screamed again, and when he wouldn't stop screaming, the DPO ordered the inspector to give him back his phone. Abednigo quickly dialed the State Secret Service guy's number and had to inform him of all that was happening. The State Secret Service guy asked him to give the DPO his phone so he could talk to him, but the DPO refused to take the phone from Abednigo, and again ordered the inspector to take his phone from him. The inspector, who immediately snatched the phone from Abednigo, gripped his shirt all of a sudden and forcefully had it removed. Abednigo was then asked to remove his trousers, and he was left with just his boxers. His name was taken as well as his details, and he was escorted into the cell by one of the officers on duty. "You will rot in jail. You don't know anything," Mama's first daughter thundered from afar as Abednigo was being pushed into the cell. "I'm innocent. Please let me go," Abednigo said in tears at the top of his voice after being thrown in and the door locked. "I am innocent," he screamed again at the top of his voice, and all of a sudden he heard a whistle. He looked back immediately and saw two other guys seated on the cell floor staring at him. He didn't even notice them when he was dragged in. "Stop making noise, my friend," one of the cellmates said in a baritone voice. "So, when you go into someone's house, you don't greet or what?" the other person said, and Abednigo's heart started beating so fast on setting eyes on them. "Sorry, good day, sir," Abednigo stuttered, bowing his head. "It was God who brought you. Now pick up this fan and give me some cool breeze," one of them said, pointing at a fan lying beside him. "Oh, okay, sir," Abednigo replied, bowing his head, and he walked slowly and then picked up the fan. They made him fan both of them for almost 3 hours non-stop. He was just there, doing what he was told in tears, too scared to complain because he had once heard some horrific cell stories before being locked up, so he had to be extra careful in order not to incur their wrath. "That's okay, you can rest now," the one who made Abednigo fan them said, and on hearing that, the fan fell off Abednigo's hands on its own, and he fell on his back and started to pant like someone who just finished a race. He was so exhausted and weak at the same time that he laid there without getting up. The other person, who wouldn't stop staring at Abednigo, spoke all of a sudden. "Come, what's wrong? Why are you panting this much? What exactly did you do that you're panting this much? Or do you want to continue?" On hearing that, Abednigo sat up all of a sudden. "No, sir. Please. I don't want to continue, sir," he said, waving both hands. "Then sit up, my friend. Why are you behaving like a baby?" the cellmate thundered. "Sorry, sir," Abednigo said, sitting on the floor with both hands in between his legs. Abednigo remembered not eating throughout that day. None of them in the cell even had something to eat, but he wasn't hungry, as he sat there saying his silent prayers, begging God for a miracle so he could be free from what he had gotten himself into. The following day, around 9 a.m., a police officer brought 3 plates of rice for them. The content in the plate was nothing to write home about. Even a 3-year-old could eat it without getting satisfied. Abednigo couldn't stop staring at it when he took his portion from the police who brought it. One of the guys in the cell noticed it. "Come, don't you like the food?" he questioned. "No, it's okay," Abednigo said, feigning a smile. "Please, if you don't like it, bring it for me," the other person said, and Abednigo handed him the plate of food immediately. "You think they will bring you fried rice or beans and plantain anytime soon? This is what we've been eating here, and they feed us once a day, till the next day before you will see another meal. So you better change your mind now and take back your food before you starve to death," the other person said. "No, it's okay. I will be all right," Abednigo said, as tears made their way down his cheeks. He watched as they both devoured their own portions, and then shared his own portion between themselves, and his heart broke. Abednigo sat there, wondering how long these guys had been in the cell, and also wondering how long he would spend because he hadn't even informed his people that he had been locked up in a faraway land. So, he decided to beg any officer that would come next into the cell to see if they would allow him to call someone, his mom or any of his siblings, to inform them that he had been locked up. He was there anticipating, and finally, a police officer brought in another person to join them in the cell. and just when he was locking up the cell door, Abednigo decided to have a word with him. "Please, sir, I don't know if I will be allowed to have access to my phone so I can call my people to come around, and to at least let them know that I'm being locked up here," Abednigo said in a pitiful tone. The officer then looked left and right to be sure no other officer was watching, and then said to Abednigo in a whisper, "How much do you have?" "Sir, I don't have any money here," Abednigo said, touching his hips. "You're not ready," the officer said, and then turned to leave, but Abednigo immediately screamed, "Wait, wait, I have some money in my pocket." On hearing that, the officer paused and then looked back swiftly. "5K?" he queried, and Abednigo immediately calculated the money he had in his pocket and nodded. "Good. Let me quickly bring the phone before the DPO comes," the officer said and left. The officer arrived at the cell a few minutes later with 3 Android phones. The names of the owners were written on tape, which was glued to the screen of the phones. "Which one is yours?" he quizzed, stretching forth the phones, and Abednigo quickly reached for his. "Be fast and do whatever you want to do before my boss comes and before any other officer notices," he said, looking outside the cell. "How about letting me have my phone too now?" one of the guys in the cell said with a squeezed face. "Will you shut up, my friend? You whose one leg is already in jail. Let me hear a word from any of you again, and I will make sure that you don't eat for a whole week. I'm the one on duty this week, so try me and see," he threatened with popped eyes. "And if I hear a word about what is happening from another officer or from my boss, I will make sure that you all don't live to tell the story," he added, stretching his neck and looking outside the cell. Abednigo was trembling in fear and his both hands were shivering. He wanted to be as fast as he could before another officer would notice what was happening. "Be fast! Be fast!" the officer said, and Abednigo nodded sporadically. He dialed his mum's number, but she wasn't picking up. He called each of his siblings, but their numbers weren't going through. He also called the state secret service guy, but he too wasn't picking up, and immediately a thought came into Abednigo's mind. He put on his data and quickly made a post on Facebook, stating that he had been arrested and locked up in a cell for a crime he knew nothing about, and he made sure to quickly add the name of the police station and the address. He went offline immediately after posting it. He then turned off the phone again and gave it to the officer, who immediately took it from him. "What happened? I thought you said you wanted to call someone," the officer queried. "Yes, I called, but their numbers weren't going through," Abednigo said. "All of them?" the officer asked, and Abednigo nodded. "Ah, you're not ready to leave here yet then? What about my money?" he questioned, spreading his palm. "It's in my trousers. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I have over 5K in my trousers, and you can take 5K from it. It's a dark-colored trousers with white stripes on it," Abednigo said. "I know, your names are written on your stuff," the officer said as he made his way out of there. As soon as he left, Abednigo sat back on the floor praying that the right people would get to see the post so they would help bring him out, because his family had no one and nothing to help him. "So, you mean you don't have anyone in your house to call? Because I don't understand how your phone was smuggled out, and you in turn don't even have anyone in this life to call," one of the guys who had been in the cell said, and then burst into laughter. The new guy just sat there with his head leaned on the wall, seeming uninterested in their conversation. "God will perform his wonders," Abednigo said, and the other guy who had been there nodded his head, giving him a look that he doesn't believe in such. Abednigo was just there praying for a miracle, because he didn't wish to spend another night there. The mosquitoes there were almost the size of a chicken, and he could remember having mosquito bites on his skin that he couldn't stop scratching. Later that night at around 7 p.m, the officer who was on duty during the day had left, and another officer had resumed duty. The new guy in the cell was the one who was now fanning the other two guys, and Abednigo could remember the new guy crying profusely while at the same time fanning them. One of the guys had to ask him to stop fanning, and then asked him why he was in so much tears. The new guy had to tell them that he stole 2 tubers of yam from the market because he didn't have money to buy them. He also added that he lost his job some 2 years before that time, and that feeding himself and his family became so difficult after searching for a new job to no avail. He recounted that he actually stole the yams because his pregnant wife was craving for them, and there was no other way to get them for her except by stealing. And that was exactly what he did. Abednigo felt pity for the new guy, and he could remember one of the cellmates whom he thought had a heart of stone telling the new guy to stop fanning them, and that he should sit somewhere and relax, assuring him that all would be well. They were all there with each person praying for his miraculous release in their hearts when they heard gunshots all of a sudden, not too far from the police station. They turned and looked at each other, unable to say a word as the sounds of the gunshots kept on approaching. Before they knew what was happening, some people broke into the police station firing gunshots into the air. Abednigo crawled immediately to where those old cellmates were, already laid face down, and he laid in between them. He was trembling in fear. "Where is he?" One of the guys who broke in screamed at the top of his voice, and before they knew what was happening, they broke into the cell and then ordered the inmates to be on their knees. Abednigo almost peed in his pants, with his heart almost popping out of his chest. "We meet again," a familiar voice said. The person was standing before Abednigo. "Raise your head and look at me," he said again, and slowly, Abednigo raised his head, and lo and behold, it was Agada. Abednigo stared at Agada in shock and terror as the escaped prisoner looked down menacingly at him, and the other inmates cowering on the floor of the cell. His heart pounded in his chest as he wondered what Agada wanted, and what would become of them all, held at his mercy after his brazen jailbreak. The dramatic reunion left Abednigo's mind racing as to how he had landed in this perilous situation, when just days before, his fortunes had seemed so bright. For more interesting episodes, type "continue" in the comments section. We love you.